Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Decommunity Podcast. I'm Roy Bernheim. I'm one of the co-founders of Decommerce, and I'm here to bring you the inside scoop of everything brands, innovation, and community through conversations with global leaders that we meet from really around the world in brands and media and nonprofits as well, who share their life story and what they think and how they think and act on community. And today, I'm so happy to have Luisa here. Luisa Herrera-Garcia is Chief Officer, Development and Production Sourcing at Alexander Wang. And we met, which is rare, I feel like these days, in person in New York. That was in June last year through a mutual friend, Jordana Guimaraes. Thank you so much for introducing us on this note. And we had such an interesting conversation at that dinner at Italy that I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today, Luisa. So thanks so much for joining. And I would love for you to introduce yourself, because I know you have such a beautiful and interesting story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yes, thank you, Jordana. She is amazing when it comes to bringing people together from all different walks of life. So as you mentioned, I am the Chief Officer of Production, Sourcing, and Development for Alexander Wang. I've been with the company, it feels like 5 years, but it's only going to be 2 years in February. And prior to that, I was with John Barbados. And really, I was with him for about 19 years, started the company from the beginning all the way through the end, building all of the teams from design and production, sourcing, logistics, also was involved in all of the buying offices and the contracts and putting those teams together. And I think that experience really led me to be able to be a candidate that Alexander Wang and the executive team felt that I was the right person for the position. When I started Alexander Wang, I only came in for sourcing, and in a short time, then I was giving the technical design team to report into me, and then the accessories and footwear product development and design team to report into me. And then just recently, at the end of last year, pretty much all product development for all departments are reporting it to myself. And it's amazing. It really is. It's been a whirlwind, but it's also exciting being able to put different teams together and build a community, as you're saying, right? So communities are built in so many different ways. And I think it really starts in a company, really breaking down silos that you may have between a marketing department, the business side, the legal side, the sourcing, and being able to bring them all together and almost having like bipartisan types of leaders talking and brainstorming on what can be implemented and improved, because everybody has a point of view, and it's important not only from the top, but I'm a strong believer you should start from the bottom. The coordinators, the assistants, the associate managers, and how do they see the future and how they want to contribute, because you always want to build from within and you always want to promote from within. And I'm very strong in doing that, whether it be partners here that I work with in the US or partners that, report to me in Asia, that I want to make sure that they're constantly growing and supporting them. So I think 2025 is going to be an exciting year for many, many reasons. Obviously, there's a lot of turbulence around the world and uncertainty. And it's more that we need to look at ourselves as how we can contribute and how we can contribute from fashion in terms of ethically being able that we're sourcing the product correctly, that we're doing our due diligence with our partners and we're not just selecting a vendor because, they happen to also produce for Balenciaga, but that we know what they stand for and that they're the right team to build and be part of Alexander Wang. We pride ourselves on quality. We pride ourselves on the type of product that we put out. We are constantly challenging the status quo. And we want to make sure as we do that we have the partners that want to do the same thing, but do it responsibly. I think in an age that people talk about sustainability, there's so many aspects of sustainability. And I don't think anybody's doing it 100%, right? Because there's always one crack that can always be improved. But for us, as we go into 2025, is really saying, what does sustainability stand for at Alexander Wang? How can we be sure that the type of product we put forth, we start, looking at whether it be energy conservation, whether it be working with materials that can be recycled or organic? How are we working with vendors that are improving their entire supply chain internally? So, and it's not so much just only about fuel and energy, but to me, it's holistically. And being a woman, I want to make sure in any country that I work with, that women are treated correctly, that every employee is treated correctly, because what we lose sight of sometimes is that when you're negotiating and you're asking for that 10 cents or that 15 cents, which at the end of the day, it really doesn't make too much of a difference to your bottom line from a humane perspective, right? Because those 10 cents or 15 cents can really impact somebody on the other end that's actually sewing the product for you, cutting, where a factory will try to cut corners to offset that in their profitability, but then be hurting somebody on their team. So I think, we've experienced that throughout the industry when it's coming out in WWD or in the New York Times and you hear of a factory in Bangladesh or in another country. I don't want it to get to that point. I want us to be able to do it from the beginning. And I want to be able that at the end of the day, yes, we have to deliver a profit. Okay. But that we do that, and we do that feeling comfortable that we've checked off every box. And so that's the exciting part for me. I think the other part, as you're constantly evolving, as you and I spoke about, and you're constantly learning, is how can we work on authenticating our product? So that's something in 2025, we're starting to work with different companies that may be doing already for Montclair or for Ralph Lauren, and seeing how we can do that and what type of information can we also include, not only to authenticate the product and to make sure that we're mitigating the type of counterfeits that happen, because we have a lot, especially when our distribution is probably about 68% in Asia, that we can also then tell a story of how that product is made, how, long term, if we're able to give back, who we're giving back to, what are those organizations, and really just show that we take pride from the beginning to the end on what we manufacture.
Wow, Luisa, there's already so much to unpack here. And for me, where I'd love to start is really within this red thread in what you just shared now, and also in previous conversations that we've had, is this real depth humanity of the humane aspect of everything that you do. And I would love to hear then in your words what this means to you in this, it's a business on impact driven, numbers driven environment. There are other players out there. There is, like you said, there's financial goals, all of that. How do you balance that, and how do you define community within that?
I'm not going to say it's easy, because I have to split myself. I have to put Luisa, the chief officer from a financial standpoint of Alexander Wang, and then I have to put myself as Luisa, the human being of Alexander Wang. And how can we make sure that those two work well together? And to me, and I think that's something that people that have known me in the industry have always admired, is that I'm people first, okay? And wanting to be able to work together to ensure that somebody knows, listen, this is a big program for me. And what can we do to reduce costs? What can we do to be much more efficient when we're putting it together? Because it represents 70% of what I'm doing with you. The other 30% I can work with, right? I can maybe take less of a margin and you could take more of a margin, but let's have a blended way of working together where it's beneficial for both parties. And I think the key thing is about really sitting down with people and understanding what they go through from the beginning to the end. It's not just, sending a purchase order and asking for a price. I'm not transactional. I'd like to be involved from the beginning. I want to understand, how can we create it? How can it be much more efficient? How can we do better? And there are times always that, I have to compromise. I have to say, okay, this is as far as I can go, because then I can't meet what I need to do for the company. But then there are other times that I'm going to say, okay, I'm giving you the extension, right? I know that you're having problems. You can't control your wash house. You can't control, that the fabric is reacting a certain way. So therefore, I understand it. It's still not affecting when I need to deliver the product. I'll take the delay. Or I can charge you back for something, but I don't want to kill you. I think sometimes when you look deep in when there's a problem, it's both sides. It's not only one-sided, right? So that's important as an executive to look in the mirror and say, the problem is not always with the other person that's servicing you. Look at yourself, look at your team and say, could I have done something better? Could I have picked up the phone instead of working on an email? So again, it's community. I think that's where it starts. And we lose sight of that it takes a village. It's not an I, it's a we. And that's what I always tell my team. It's not I, it's we. And if there's a problem, and I've always said this, and I will continue to say that, if there is a problem, I will be the first one to take the hit for the department. Okay. When we do things well, it's the department that did it well. It's not Luisa. Okay. I'm there to help guide the team to be the best that they can be and to have them shine and to grow and to build that community. And that community can be from my design assistants. It could be from the person that's in my legal team or my finance team to my directors that are working on the product. So I find that it's important that everybody feels that they're contributing, but more importantly, that they are being recognized for what they contribute. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. We're always running, Roy, and we forget sometimes how important it is just to stop and say thank you to people. And we should all do more of that.
I mean, really, I admire you for doing this, and it's so beautiful. And I've seen many examples in the industry where people didn't behave this way. And like you said, right, it's not necessarily the easy way. But I'd love for you to share how this approach, your approach, the harder way, has actually rewarded you so much more.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. There was a colleague that over the holidays, one of our factories, and he sent me a WhatsApp and saying, Merry Christmas, Luisa. And we were having some problems in production and he wanted to apologize on behalf of himself and his team, how it affected our bottom line, because it did make a big hit. But one thing he did say was, when I was introduced to you, everybody would say, be careful because she's so hard. She's so tough. You don't want to mess with her. And then he's like, and then I got to know you and I'm like, okay, she's hard and she's strict, but then she's also compassionate and understanding. And I learned that through mentorship, quite frankly. And the person that really, I had amazing mentors in my career. And I think, a lot of it has to do with yourself and how you push yourself and what you want to do and you want to achieve. But it also has to do with the people that surround you and that help you grow. And one of them was really John Barbados, JV. And for him, as I got promoted very quickly when I worked with the organization, maybe too quickly for myself. And he sat me down one time and said, you're too tough. And in order for you to win over an audience, you need to just chill, And I went home and I'm too tough. What's he talking about? I'm reaching all of my goals. But I realized what he meant, that I was too tough on people and I needed to understand that people make mistakes. And it was through that. And I took that entire year really to push myself out of my comfort zone and really to push myself to be a better person as I was communicating to other people in other departments, right? To really listen to what they had to say and to be there to support them, not just say I'm supporting you and then walk away, right? And go back to your office, but really supporting them and coming back and circling back on what they were doing. And at the end of that year, John and I were talking and he's like, you know what? You did it. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you did it. You are now 360. You overcame that. It's like people are coming into my office like, I don't know what you said to her, but she's amazing. Because I was still tough. I was still telling people we need to execute and make sure you're checking everything. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, mistakes happen. Let's learn from it. What do we need to do? But more importantly, I was there to support the team. So when the team needed me, they would bring me in. They would be like, I really need you on this phone call. We're having issues with this vendor. I don't know how to get across to them. And I'm like, not a problem. Let's take it through, walk me through what's going on. Let's have the call together. And sometimes in business, people just allow their teams to just do everything, take the hit and do everything themselves. And they want to take the glory. While for me, it's a team effort. Let's roll up our sleeves. If we're getting ready for a show or we're getting ready for market and boxes are coming in, the teams are looking at me. It's like, why are you opening up boxes? I'm like, why not? We have 15 boxes. We have less than an hour to get all these samples ready for a meeting with Alex. It's all hands on deck as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't change. So yeah, we are opening up the boxes. And then afterwards, I'm going to buy everybody a pack of beer and we're going to have pizza, So it's that type of thing that you want to make sure that everybody understands that. And I think that's one thing that, my dad, which you and I spoke about, he's 103. And, he came and bought myself and my two brothers from Cuba. And so being an immigrant, he worked very hard. He had 2 jobs and barely knew English, but he put us through school and college. And it's because of him that I realized at the end of the day who I am, and I'm a Black Cuban woman and very proud of it. And, I'm here to say that if you work hard, if you believe in yourself, if you don't compromise. And what I mean that is that you become someone that you're not, right? That you stick to that and that you learn that more importantly, you're humble through your life, is that rewards can happen and dreams can happen. Right? I never thought when I graduated from LIM that I would be the chief officer of Alexander Wang. Did I aspire to get there? Absolutely. But it's when it does happen. It's like you pinch yourself and you're like, okay, is this really happening? And then you have people like, the executive board and alumni board of LIM that is giving me an award in May and a doctorate award because of my accomplishments and the type of person that I am. And I'm like, okay, but I don't see myself that way. And I think that's humility. That's what all of us have to do, that we don't see ourselves maybe like others do, but we do it because we love what we do. We do it because I love to mentor. I want to give back. I want to teach people. I want to make the world a better place. I know it sounds corny and everybody says that, but I think there are ways of doing that, in every aspect of what we do in our field.
And talking of the world now, I think that's a great key word, because I'd love to hear in your words here as well. So there's so much going on in the world, and it feels like there is much more going on as we progress through time. How do you see the role, let's say your role, but then also the role of fashion, the industry in today's world and tomorrow's world?
It's constantly changing. I was on a call yesterday with one of the directors from the AFA. And we just joined the organization. We were just talking about different committees that we should be a part of, and committees that can be a part of my role as a C-suite for legislation changes in Washington and having a voice like for the Fashion Act, a voice on Prop 65 and some of the things that are coming up in California, getting ready for the European passport, which wants complete transparency. And now I think it's been pushed out to 2027. But you need to start in 2025 to get ready for what they're going to ask for in 2027, right? And I think they're all good things. I think some acts may be a little bit much more extreme than others. So we have to kind of find a way to find that middle ground, and being able to be and allowing myself to be part of certain committees. I want to have a voice that we can make fashion and how we deal with fashion a better way. I think sometimes we say we want to react quickly and we want to have, quick response, but then we don't change any of our ways, right? So it still will take 90 to 120 days to get fabric. And then it still takes me another 2 months to do the production. And it still takes me another month to get it to the store. I'm like, if you want to be quick, we have to shorten that. We have to think out of the box and we have to do things much more efficiently and effectively. But even as of now, and I started conversations in December, we know we have a new change happening in the United States on January 20th, right? And we also know that they've already stated that tariffs will be increased for certain countries. When we manufacture 70% of our business to 80% out of China, that's a major impact. We are going from a 7.5% tariff to a 17.5%, which is, it's stated that on the 20th, it'll go up by 10%. That could be a 2 to 3% or point hit, depending on what you do. So for me, it's starting conversations early on with our partners and saying, okay, how can we share in this? Because I still want to work with you rather than just shift into another country and then have to restart again, right? So how can we share together? And those are conversations I kind of started last year and now going into this year of reducing that, right? Sharing the tariffs or finding ways where anything inbound will be reduced in my cost, right? So that it's a win-win situation. Everything is so volatile right now in the world, but also with fashion, that the last thing I want to do is to have to increase my prices out of a competitive, area. So wherever we can mitigate that and not have to pass it to the ultimate consumer and compromise the sales, I want to be able to do that on the sourcing aspect of it. But that also leads to better engineering of your product, right? How can I take that design and sit down and not compromise the design or the quality, but think differently as to how I'm going to produce it? And be much more efficient and not be so wasteful with water or anything like that. We do a lot of washes at Alexander Wang. And how can we work with partners that are using much more sustainable types of chemicals when they're doing these types of processes, that we can implement that know-how now into our product? So it's that constant change of ensuring testing. When I started, we really weren't doing a lot of tests. And I I'm so proud to say within a year, we are testing every product. The last group was really implementing, my footwear and my handbags. All of the leathers are being tested. We're making sure that we're meeting the requirements of the European test requirements from RSL, all the way to our GB testing for China distribution, so that we are proud of what we're putting forth in the market.
Wow. Congratulations to that. That's a huge milestone. That is amazing. And
there's still a lot more to go. I'm very proud of the team and what they've done in a very short time.
And I'd love to dive into that. What's in the roadmap? What you still want to achieve? And you mentioned, so one topic, a big one is, of course, sustainability. And the second one is also this transparency and traceability.
Correct.
Can you share a bit more how you think about that going forward as well, and where you see fashion going generally, and how you see, your role within that direction?
Of course. I think we actually started to work last year with a company called Retrace. And Retrace has a platform that actually out of Germany, where we put all of our key vendors onto this platform. They had to sign up and they basically show their entire mapping. So they show their subcontractors, they're sharing with us where they're getting the raw material if we're doing a vertical program. So again, we're tracing all of the data. We started within 3 months to 4 months. We ended the year when we first started in 2024, we were tracing when it came to cotton about maybe 15% of our products and where the cotton was coming from. We ended 2024, and that's really to the result of one of my directors, Marissa Schoon, who's amazing, who really took it under her belt to do that. We ended it with tracing about 80% of our cotton. And that was a huge, huge implementation. And I was so proud of her and the work that she did, and being able to now go onto the platform and you can actually see where it's coming from, right? Where it's coming from the farm, where it's being spun, where if there was a subcontractor that sold it to someone else, and we're able to track everything now. And now we want to do that with wools. How can we be much more responsible? How we're looking to make sure that all of our tanneries are certified. So as we look at the product from the development process, starting to work from the raw material, the trims, the factory sourcing of who are you associated with? What are your certifications? What type of product do you already have that is organic, that is recyclable? How can we implement that? How can we make the product better and much more efficient? And also taking into consideration less water, that's energy that can be used in a process. So all of those things have to start up front in the beginning as you're thinking about it, and then implementing it all the way through. But you're constantly learning. There's technology, like, when you and I were talking about, we're now looking and saying, how can we start to utilize AI when it comes to marketing or when it comes to design, right? And so there's that world that we're trying to work on. And there's so many different platforms that we're trying to see who are the best partners for us, especially as we're now looking into authenticating our products and implementing that into our product in the upcoming seasons. How do we do that? And what else can we have? So when somebody scans that barcode, they're not only saying that, okay, it's registered for Alexander Wang, almost like when you go to Louis Vuitton, right? And you're buying that bag, but then it also can tell us the story of that product.
So how do you think about that? I'd love to hear more about this authentication. Also together, not just authenticating, saying, yes, this is an original product, but also this consumer experience that goes with it and the journey, even the life that this piece takes of its own. How do you think about that?
I mean, as you're talking, my head is spinning, right? Because you could take it in through so many levels of, even the journey that then people can then communicate and tap onto that of how they use the bag, where they went with that bag, how, whatever that case may be, they went to an event exactly. And it reports back, whether it be to us, whether it goes back to our Instagram, whether it goes back to the store. So there's so many ways that we can look at it and communicate and share it back to our community. And the community is being, the people that buy our product, the people that follow Alexander Wang, and then the community within that we have within the company itself. So there's so much aspects of that. And that there goes back to your word of community, because it takes my e-com team, it takes our marketing team, it takes my IT team, the product team, Alex, obviously, with the vision of how we want to do things and what information we want to have, to look at it together, the buying team, and say, how can we implement it? But then because we're global, you have the US sub, right, of how we're doing that. And then how can we then do the same thing in China? right? There are different types of regulations. So therefore we have to be sensitive with how we may roll things out when it comes to our China partners. But it's very excited. So I think if you have me back in the next 6 months, I could tell you how that project is going because I'm still in the infancy stage. And like I said, I become like a little bit of a geek and I'm like taking down all the notes and I'm going to every webinar and asking all the questions so that we can start testing it and start to work on it. But it's very exciting.
That is super exciting. And how does it, let's say, if this is a project, how does a project like this even kick off and take shape?
Well,
across departments or somebody takes the lead? How does that work?
Yeah, it is going to be across departments. I do have one person that will probably take the lead, and it'll probably be Marissa, who worked with me on the Traceability and the Retrace platform, which we're continuing because we gave a presentation to our CFO and head of legal counsel, and they loved it. And really the next presentation is going to be to our executive team. But it will start with her, and then we will bring different teams into it as we need it. But the first step is getting quotes on what the project is going to be and then ensuring that it could be approved by our CFO. So what is the return on investment? And, how is it going to benefit the company and make sure that it's something that we could say, okay, it's worth doing.
And how does something like this, because the benefit, there's obviously the tangible benefit, more revenue, but there's probably also more the social branding aspect.
Correct.
How do you think about that? And how is something like this put into a project sheet of like, that's the ROI, that's the total?
Yeah. Well, I think when I have to work with my CFO, my ROI is really the bottom line and the return on investment when it comes to the money, the cha-ching, right? Obviously the social she'll think about, but that's something more that my chief officer for marketing and PR is going to say, this is the ROI. But the ROI can come also for more customer interaction. It could come for more customer awareness, which will lead more customers into your store or onto your website. So again, the traffic that you could get, and then that hopefully you're getting new customers and you're converting them. That's extremely important. So it's like the grassroots that you want to do on the ground, depending on your market. But for us, also, it's reducing the counterfeiting. It's finding out sooner and being able to trace those things and react and put things in place.
And that's really where you can put the numbers together and see what
exactly
a measurable uptick.
Right. It's going to pay on its own. It's something that even when we started to talk about some counterfeits that we had in one of the stores that we were selling, and everybody looked at me and said, okay, when can you put a project together? I'm like, okay. I felt like almost like give it to Mikey.
Fascinating. Well, I'm also really curious to see how, as you dive deeper and become more geeky about all those different technologies, how we continue that. And with that, I think I'd love to ask, because I see we're already getting close to time on the creativity side, like on AI and creativity, and how also engagement with customers, how will this take shape and how do you see this really come into such an organization and how much experimentation is possible going forward?
Well, I think it's something, Alex is very, very techie, right? And he likes, like I said, to push the status quo. So he himself, along with the marketing teams, are working on doing this and how are they creating that buzz, which obviously will then get people into our stores. So I think he's already started to embark on how he's going to use it from a creative aspect of it. For me, it will be more of the exploratory of AI as it could support and help design creativity, right? So that we're not able to always have to make a prototype and spend thousands of dollars on something. Maybe we're creating it, which we're already doing 3D, but how can you do other images where presentations can come up and you could have much more of an idea before you even put that into work and waste time? Because by the time it comes back, it's like, it didn't quite work, right? So how can we do that and have it seem so much like it's real? Right? And before you even put it into work. So everybody's going to be using it in different aspects of it. Obviously, you also have to control it, right? Because with all of that, the more information and the more things that you start to get on and Google and work with, there are people that can try to then get into your systems and hack your system. So we have to which is something our IT teams are working on to see how people are using different types of AI, different types of either whether it be AI or WeChat or anything like that, so that we put the proper parameters around our systems, because you don't even think of that. You don't think that on the other side of the world, there's a hacker that's trying to get into your system, right? And there are a lot of big companies, as you know, that have had major issues with that, especially the banks and so forth. So we want to make sure as we are embarking on all of this amazing technology that we're also putting in place, what are the things that we need to make sure we protect ourselves against?
Yeah, no, and doing the research and doing the checks.
Right. Absolutely. But it's interesting times, we're in a time right now that everything you do is in social media in less than 24 hours, right? It's so visible. So you need to always make sure that whatever you do from a brand perspective, that you're doing it as responsible as possible. And that everybody again, goes back to community. Everybody in the company understands what you stand for, first of all, and the information that you're sharing.
Luisa, I would love to just keep going for another couple of hours. I want to be conscious of your time as well. And thank you so much for all your life experience and the tech experiences that you've shared.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully we could do this again, like I said, in the springtime, when some of the projects that we're just starting now should be in work, and give you the progress of where we are. And we could talk some more and see, if the European passport is going to happen or not, and what are people doing, and more on traceability, and hopefully tariffs don't increase more than 10%. But if they are, what are people doing there too? Right? So a lot more to happen in 2025. I think, as someone told me, life happens in between your plans, right? So you always have to be prepared.
True. Plans are great until...
and then there's the reality, right? So we have to be ready for the reality.
And you know what? I think that sounds great. Then we'll schedule another one a few months down and catch up on everything that's happened in between.
Absolutely.
That sounds wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Roy. It's been a pleasure. And like you and I said, we can continue and go on down so many different avenues related to whether it be the human factor or the business aspect of it. But at the end of the day, it still comes back. And like I said to you, it comes back to humility. It comes back to complete transparency, communication, and community, and really embracing everyone that's involved in the process, because it's not just an I, it's a we. So
that's such a beautiful note to end the show with, and nothing to add from my side to this. Thanks so much, Luisa.
Thank you too. And have a wonderful weekend and stay warm.
Yeah, thanks.